The following is brought to you by the National Protester Network. This is from a TikTok Live from April 28th, 2025, where we are discussing the aftermath of the Unfuck America tour and the topic of why it's so hard for white people to take accountability for their racism and microaggressions. The panelists include Star Action, Tattoos, Cats, and Rage, Sarita Nicole, and is hosted by Glitzy Girl. For context, we begin by addressing comments in the chat. Accountability for what, Walker? Accountability for the fact that you are biased. And sometimes you show bias, and there's nothing wrong with that. You have to be aware and acknowledge it and say, okay, I'm going to do better. Every day is a learning experience, no matter who you are, no matter where you are. But we have to admit that we as white people are born with privilege that our black friends are not. Black and brown people. They are not born with those same privileges. It's okay to admit that. It's okay to acknowledge it. And it's okay to be white. Well, Walker, I'm so glad you're perfect. I'm not perfect, and I'll be the first to tell you I'm not.
Well, Walker, you just joined.
And I say the wrong things. Sometimes I have to watch myself and catch myself and say, wait a minute. Is that okay? We learn every day, and every day I think we learn that we might hurt people's feelings or say the wrong thing, or maybe we misjudge someone based on whatever it is. Can you not take accountability for that? Okay, KTP, if you say so. Let's not call out bad behavior when we see it, I guess. We see bad behavior, we see bad actors on the left and on the right, but I guess we're not supposed to call that behavior out, because God forbid we hold somebody accountable and they take a little criticism. That's what it sounds like you're saying to me. Ignore them. They're not part of this. They don't get it. They never will. So, I don't care. I'm talking about those who are supposed to be on our side, who are supposed to be fighting for everyone and human rights, and they're completely stomping on people.
Yeah, and agree. Just ignore MAGA because they're just going to say silly stuff. It's not even worth acknowledging them at this point, honestly, because they just want an argument. They just don't get it. I mean, like, so I grew up bankrupt with, well, I personally wasn't bankrupt. My family was. My family was bankrupt. My father lost his job. Now he is a dark-skinned Italian man. So, believe it or not, especially we're talking like the 80s, there was actually a lot of racism towards Italians during that time. And there still kind of is, but it's gotten better with Italians, to be honest. Like, I don't, now people think like the most, and I'm quoting this racism that I get from people is your family in the mafia? And, you know, that annoys me, but it's just whatever. So, but he actually was like accused of being in the mob when he was like the most opposite of all of those things. But regardless, our very close family friends were from Africa. They were black. They were from Africa, and they helped to raise me. And I think I learned a lot from a very young age because of that. But I still had privilege that they didn't have. Being so, my mother's Irish, my father's Italian, so I didn't really have. I tan, but I had blonde hair when I was younger, so I had very like I'm very, you know, well, I am white, but white passing as well, you know, unlike my father. And I didn't experience some of the things that my father experienced, or that my close friends experienced, and I saw it firsthand. And it's really hard for people to just to see this because I didn't have privilege, I didn't have, but you do, and you don't have. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to have. No one's like saying that you're a bad person because like you can't help how you're born. Just like no one, they can't either. But all you have to do is just kind of accept that people have been given privileges in life that other people don't have, and they've had to work harder just to get the same things that come easier to you. They've had to fight for every little thing they have, and understanding that, but understanding you fought too. um that you can relate to it but you can never truly understand it, is there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why it makes people so upset.
I know it makes it, they act like we're saying that they're bad people.
Yeah, and not at all, not at all. And I also don't think that, like, I know a lot of people say, and I think you even said, and I don't mean this in any way, but I think a lot of people say all white people are racist. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think the sentiment of it is like that all white people can be born with a certain amount of unawareness of their privilege, and that it needs to be deconstructed. But it doesn't mean that they're racist, because racism is often, disliking someone for being a different color. And that, I don't believe that that itself is true with a lot of people. But I do believe that people don't deconstruct their privilege, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, well, inherent racism is the idea that we're all born, with white skin, and like I said, people born with darker skin, that is a strike against them. And we grow up in this system in America where, which is built around white supremacy, because we were built on the work of slaves, the labor of slaves, which were mostly black people, black men, shed blood for this country to be built. And our systems are still participating somewhat in that um, vein, because I mean, just look, like we've already mentioned, the police system, the court system, justice system. I was a social worker. I can tell you that there's lots of racism in that field. I mean, it's, we all like participate in this system. Some people even argue that capitalism is racist, because white people are typically ahead of the game. So that is how the inherent racism comes into play. And just like you said, we all have biases that we may not even be aware of. But the important thing is becoming aware of those things and saying, yeah, I do realize that I have biases. I mean, it could even be going to a mostly white school and then meeting a black student after your entire life kind of being, maybe you were given the impression that black people weren't quite as smart as white people, or they couldn't get into those good schools, and you're just shocked to see a black person there. Like, how did they get here? I mean, that is a form of bias. We have these little biases. Actions speak louder than words. And you can go, I mean, I know people who voted for Harris who still will say the most vile shit and still don't get it. Like, they just don't. They're still not understanding the system at play, and the fact that they have to deconstruct their own white fragility and their own biases, because we all have them, and we are all white people are inherently racist. We just are, because it's the system we grew up in.
I agree with your point of, if you're in a space and someone says that something you did was problematic, whether or not you personally feel, I think the biggest thing, and I said this before, is you can't get defensive. And it's hard not to, because like it's human nature to become defensive, especially if you don't truly believe that you are doing anything problematic, right? But that's just going to make people look kind of even more sideways. So it's a process for people to learn. It doesn't mean if somebody got defensive that they are what people are saying they are. And we also have to remember that people love to cancel people. It's like a thing, you know, people get like, they always are. If somebody's up high, they're always looking, and I'm not saying in this situation that's what's going on, but people love to latch on to that kind of stuff and be like, yeah, let's kick them while they're down. But if someone's being problematic, they're being problematic, right? So it's a tricky situation. You have to judge each thing individually, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Hello, Ken.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
We're good.
So what I wanted to ask is, you guys sound sincere about your background. However, I think sometimes, and you can answer this if you want, obviously. I think sometimes people from certain political and social side will make claims about holding accountability or observing people do these microaggressions. But what I'm starting to find out is just as much as I would say more the right winger side of the discussion. We'll find out a lot of people on the left, so-called left, are doing the same things, but in different ways. And I can give some examples if you're open to that.
Yeah, that's why we're actually here. We're talking about the Unfuck America controversy and Z Sanchez and all that. I don't know if that's what you were talking about.
Well, not really. I was talking more about like, okay, for instance, you got some people who don't really recognize when they say certain things because they think it's protecting a demographic. Especially like, let's take this election for instance. If you go look at who voted more for Trump by demographic, you see that some of the people that talk the loudest about we should have voted for Trump are a part of a demographic who mostly voted for Trump. But then when they talk to people like my demographic, it's like, well, we voted mostly for Trump. What about you? I mean, voted mostly for Harris. So what about you? And it's just like, talk about the judicial system. You can't talk about the judicial system and say you're against the injustice if you add to injustice just because you don't want to be seen as a false accuser, depending on the circumstances. So basically, without going to like a long narrative, I think, or a tangent, I think that, those microaggressions can come from all types of sources, and there's all types of people who need to work on those. Now, sometimes y'all get baited into that. I will admit that. I think that's, as a black man, I think there are some black creators and people who just try to throw that into everything, and it doesn't always apply. But sometimes it does. And, I just want to know if you caught yourself doing that, would you be accountable for it?
Yeah, can I say something real quick? Because I 100% agree with everything you're saying. And so this may or may not be exactly what you're talking about, but something interesting that occurred to me was I had been under the impression not that long ago, a few months ago, that using the term POC when I was typing out like this was on Threads, was inclusive. And because people were like, I had been told previously by people not to call them Black, right? And so I was using that term. And then I had a couple of Black women that came in and said, hey, I find that when you say POC, that's more demeaning to me because you're lumping me in with a bunch of other people and kind of not, I'd rather you called me Black and just use a capital B. And so I was like, oh, and I felt horrid. I felt like an a-hole. I still think about it like an a-hole when I think about it. And I felt really terrible and I apologized and I stopped using that term in my typing. Now I've heard people say BIPOC, but my point is, yes, like I'm willing to learn. I know I'm not perfect. I want to do the right thing, and I feel terrible whenever that does occur. If that answers your question.
If I could say something, I know there's another person jumped up here. That's not really what I would consider microaggression. That's just identity. A lot of black people, including myself, since this election, given some of the voting demographics based on the exit polls, a lot of us have separated ourselves from other people of color because based on the rhetoric that wasn't reflected on this last election. So BIPOC, I think, is good because you are literally saying Black, Indigenous, and people of color, because obviously you have to like sing a song to describe everybody who's non-white. But if you know the person is Black, like if you were saying Black person, I would be cool with that because yes, that's what I identify. Obviously, I'm not directly the color Black, but that's just the identifier we've had for such a long time. A lot of people accept that. But that's not a microaggression. You didn't do that to be insulting. You didn't do that to falsely accuse a person. You didn't do that to like try to harm a person. You did that based on what description you thought was appropriate. And you know, if they corrected you, cool. But if they corrected you like in a hostile way, then they were just wanting to be hostile. And I would say that as a black person.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I had a friend, a black friend, who said that last night that, she was saying something about she didn't care for the term POC, and I was going to ask her privately. I hadn't had a chance yet because that was like just 6 hours ago. But anyway, yeah, I know some people, I've heard people say they don't like the term BIPOC, and some say they are fine with it. My daughter is the president of a BIPOC campus organization, which is all the non-white students in the theater drama department at her school. It's called Harlem. But yeah, they use that term. So they use that term freely, So they embrace it. So I don't know. I think I'm still learning as far as that. And Ken, I absolutely would take accountability for something that somebody thought that I was being inappropriate about something. Yes, I would listen, I would learn, I would, try my best to understand and accept the lessons that are given.
I might have taken us off track of what you were originally talking about because I was
Oh
being
yeah, well, if I did that, I do apologize. But
no,
I
no,
just
no.
wanted to ask that because, like I said, like I'll give you an example. There's a creator on here who, unfortunately, I keep on coming across on lives, and she's very performative. I've heard her literally say that it was okay for a YT woman to keep a biracial child away from the darker side of the family.
Ooh.
And she happens to have a mixed biracial child. And I heard her say that, and I called out immediately for it. But then when she got around some mostly black creators, she had a different tone about inclusivity and intersectional and all that bull crap. And when I called out again, she went right into Carolyn Bryantism, and she spread rumors about me. She told people I was stalking her and stuff like that. I wasn't doing anything the same. A lot of these lives coincide with each other. Some of the same creators will be in other people's lives. And so I had to do video on her. And then I had people PMing me, telling me I was going to get reported to the FBI and all this bull crap and stuff about you see who's in charge of the FBI now. And I'm like, dude, I don't give a fuck if you do that. But what I'm saying is that these are the type of things that a lot of people on the left will do because they don't want to take accountability for what they say, but they're quick to like talk about like the right side who's openly known for their stuff. And I do want to say one last thing about the chat. Nobody's telling nobody they shouldn't be or they shouldn't be proud to be who they are or have pride in being YT. But the thing is, some of your YT pride spreads to, yeah, they spread to like trying to keep people down or trying to like be worried about what somebody's doing. And so, I just wanted to put that in there, interject that. But other than that, that's all I really had to say. So if you need me to drop, I can do that.
Oh, no, you can stay up if you want.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks for your input. We super appreciate it. It's good to hear from you. I remembered what I was going to say. So I think that in relation to what Ken, what you were saying, I think it's almost more dangerous when you have people on the left who are posing as allies that then do these microaggressions or these racist things, whether they understand they're doing them or not, than for someone to just be outwardly, aware of it, because it can, it's just so much more nefarious and so much more dangerous, and for the community and for everyone when those types of things happen on the left where people are supposed to be not like that. So that's what I was thinking of.
Exactly. And this whole thing, people are saying we shouldn't handle it publicly because it just creates more conflict and makes us look more, like we're all the infighting. But But if you're not calling out something publicly, and they did try to approach this lady, and if she had just taken the criticism and tried to fix it, that would be one thing, but she didn't. And that's why things have been taken to this point so publicly. And now I'm like you, I've been lost my thought.
I've been like that all day.
But but yeah, I was saying to somebody, Aunt or whoever earlier, when he said, I'm proud to be white, I said, well, great. Be proud to be white. I don't care. There's nothing wrong with being white. I'm white. So, I mean, nothing wrong with being white. It's how you use that privilege. And if you deny that you ever had any, that is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's important to address these things. And I know what I was going to say. Because the fact that she didn't address it and it became such a thing, it poisoned the message itself. And now the entire movement is, like they're not even going forward because of things. And your message is tainted, like I was saying yesterday in our chat. If we have a plan, a mission, whatever we organize or set out to do, if we don't have our P's and Q's in order and something like that is exposed, it will unravel the entire thing. And, we've seen it so often that we take the spotlight off of what the intention was and put it on this controversy and drama, and then nobody cares about what you set out to do in the first place. The message is lost and you got to throw the whole thing away, basically. And that's what the sad thing is, the tragedy. And not to mention the fact that this whole thing is tearing people apart, a community that I have become part of, that I love, that I enjoy, and I am seeing my friends unfollow and block each other. And it's breaking my heart. Like, why did it's all because this one white lady could not take accountability for her actions, and it just, the poison spread,
Well, if I may, I would like to speak a little bit on that white privilege part. Now, as a person, I don't speak for all black people. I speak mainly for myself. I've been to some of the poorest white areas that, even growing up in Baltimore City, I didn't grow up in a bad situation. I grew up in a pretty decent. I've seen some mostly white areas and counties. Somebody had mentioned West Virginia, particularly in West Virginia. I had some business out there at a time, and it was like, ugh, like I wouldn't want to live like this. And you have people who, not everybody obviously. So obviously there's no such thing as white privilege in an area like that, because well, there may be a measure, but it's not presented because those people are suffering. They're mostly white. Their law enforcement is subjecting them. Their court system is subjecting them. The businesses are subjecting them. So they don't really experience that. And even in some areas like where I live at now, it's not there. But there are times when there are. Like, you would see, like, there was a court case where a black man and a white man got charged for the same crime, and they both didn't have priors. And when they went before the judge threw the book at the black man, and the judge didn't throw the book at the white man. There were two women in one of the states that were convicted of the same financial crime, and the white woman actually had more money that she stole. Same judge, same courtroom. White woman gets less time. The black woman got like 10 years. So that's what we say. That's what a lot of us mean about white privilege. We don't mean that you guys are walking around on a cloud and flying around like Goku and stuff like that. We're talking about a certain instance. And I think sometimes that message gets muddled, and then white people who will not, well, excuse me, YT people who don't have good lives will get mad at us for saying YT privilege. And there's a certain nuance to that. It's just not like, you guys are handed gold and you're walking around. Because, like, I could give another example. Like, where I work at a port. I live here in Florida, and I work at a port. I'm a heavy equipment operator. And I see people on their boats, catamarans, nice fishing vessels, all types of stuff rolling around. And I'm like, wow, that's nice. They got that, and then they also have their homes and stuff like that. So when I hear these people complain about life, I'm like, what are you complaining about? You're doing pretty good, right? And it's like, but it almost feels like they want some YT superiority privilege where they want to consider it to be superior over everything instead of being thankful for what they have or what they work for. So, like I said, there's nuances to it. There are some people of color, black people, who think that it's just like this 24/7 thing, but I don't think like that. I'm an objective thinker, and I don't say like you just got WT privilege for being alive. It just depended on the circumstances.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's I don't think you were on earlier when I was talking about it, because I was saying that people get very uh defensive, right, when someone says that they're privileged, especially people like myself. What I was telling a story about is I grew up in a very my parents were bankrupt when I was born. My dad lost his job, and we were on welfare and had, I mean, literally no money. And so, but that doesn't mean that that I didn't have privilege just from the way I looked. It's just not what people think when they think of the word privilege. All they hear is, oh, your life was easy. No, what we mean is that when I started at this part, like I grew up in a bankrupt family with no money in a poor neighborhood with all of these circumstances. And then if you look at a black kid that grew up the same as me and they were given less than I was, just because of that. So that's all we're talking about.
Right. I mean, I'm poor right now. Can't pay my bills. House is falling apart. But, I still got white privilege.
Like, I
Yeah.
can barely find a job up here in Kentucky despite putting in the applications like McDonald's and stuff like that. But despite the struggles I'm having down here, I'm still privileged.
Are you in Eastern
Likely,
Kentucky?
huh?
Are you in Eastern Kentucky?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you said West Virginia. This is just a joke. Don't get mad. But if aliens were ever to attack the United States, I would tell them to take those areas out of the United States before anything else.
Yeah, I don't, no offense taken. I hate it as much in Kentucky as I did in West Virginia. Liked it a little bit more in West Virginia just for the walking aspect and stuff like that, being able to walk. Like if I was bored, sad, tired, anything, although like walking when tired, it hits different. But being able to go and walk to Dollar General if I wanted to, versus it now being a 25-minute car ride away, absolutely sucks. Take these out first.
And for whoever is talking about working and busting their ass and blah, 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 um, I am proud of you. That's awesome that you work every day since you were 12 and all that. You know, guess what? You have, did I say it?
Oh, oh! I know the answer. I know the answer. Can I say it?
Yeah.
Privilege. That's white tea.
Yes, you have white privilege and you have the privilege of being mobile and being able to work because some of us on this panel are disabled and can't do that.
Mhm.
So be
That's
grateful.
that's the whole reason I had to move out of West Virginia because, like, yes, there are some absolute cheap dog ass places to live in West Virginia, but the places that had jobs where I could actually work, places that were on the bus schedule and everything like that, because I'm too blind to drive, too disabled to drive, legally blind, so I can't drive, so I have to rely on the bus to get me from place to place. Can't do that, and certain parts of Virginia because the bus won't run up there, or I'll have to bike an extra hour just to get to the bus station, and everything like that privilege, like being able to work, being able to drive, like actually be able to drive and see and stuff like that. Those are other, obviously not just white heat. It happens everywhere, but even those are privileges and stuff like that. Being able-bodied and being able to work 60 hours, because I would love to work 60 hours a week. I would absolutely love to get out of this house for 60 hours, go bust my ass for a job, and come home exhausted versus sitting at home all day doing nothing but putting in applications or playing games, putting in applications and stuff like that. Like it, this is so boring. I hate it so much. Like I absolutely hate saying, oh, I don't have a job because I can't find one, and it's
But that is the problem with innovation. Like the job I have that I'm at right now, it's a job that I really researched out. I used to do logistics. And when you're in those small towns, like for instance, I had the misfortune of being around Mingo County. And Mingo County, if you don't work in the coal mines or you don't do something surrounding that or you're not good at maintenance or whatever, it's really hard to get a job that's going to sustain you. And you'll end up living with your peepaw and your um what's the word that they use, Mima, you know. And I'm not saying that to insult, but that's just the reality. And like a lot of people really think that a lot of people up here just being lazy and not trying to do anything with their life. But I remember when during the Obama's administration, when the economy got bad, and I remember I was working overseas as a contractor, and there were a lot of people having employment issues, and they were all over, and they were blaming the administration for why they couldn't get a job. And now it's funny, like people have a different tone now. They just want to call you lazy. And ironically enough, of a couple of the white women I was in a relationship with, two of them were on government assistance, and they were actually jealous of me because I had never been on it. And it's just, I kind of found that to be funny. But you know, there's just circumstances. And, you know, it's the job market is not that great in certain areas, and or at least if they do have a job, they don't pay you enough to survive.
I was just going to say, Social Security is not government assistance. We work and we pay into that program, so don't say I live off the government because I get Social Security. You're going to be getting Social Security one day when you retire, hopefully, if it's still there, if Trump doesn't dismantle the whole damn thing, and you're going to want it.
Right, that's our tax dollars. That's literally your money. Like my father worked his entire life blue collar and is now disabled, has Parkinson's and dementia, and is utilizing Social Security. Like that's his money though. He paid into that.
Exactly.
See, like I tried getting on disability for so long and stuff like that, but it's gotten to the point where I'm honestly a little scared. Not scared to get on disability, but like, you know, to people like, oh, what do you do for employment? What do you do for work? Especially being so young, being 25, 20, 24, be 25 in August. It's, you know, oh, telling people, oh, I'm on disability and everything makes me feel lazy. Like it makes me feel like I'm not doing something right, and then they judge like, oh, well, you're not working, you look able-bodied, you look perfectly fine, why can't you do this, that, or the other? And it's like invisible disabilities exist and they're there, and like they are just as valid as, you know, visible disabilities.
Yeah, as a veteran, I definitely understand that because there are people who I serve with that literally can't be around people. I don't like to be around people, but I just have to suck it up because, you know, if you're out on these streets, unhoused or going from shelter to shelter or living place to living place, you got to deal with people in ways that you don't want to. So it's best to deal with people and get some type of employment going and get some type of income generated than to deal with people when you're down in the dumps. So I definitely agree with you on that.
It's also it's a very MAGA take where they think that if you're not directly contributing to the economy that you are a worthless human being. That's how they see humans. It's very weird.
Oh, glad you brought that up because I wanted to say something
Yeah,
along
go
those
for it.
lines.
Hold
No,
on
no,
just a
go ahead
second.
first. I definitely want to add on to that. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the rhetoric that comes from that side. Now, when they were discussing everything about the foreign aid to a certain country, the comments was that foreign aid could be used here in the United States to help people get from being unhoused, people to get them out of poverty and stuff like that. And in some ways, I agree. But as soon as we talk about social programs for people, then they want to come with the rhetoric they have now. Now, the comment is this is a great country. So there are several countries in Europe, other parts of the world that have good social programs that take care of people who are not able to work either long or work at all in some places, right? And the hypocrisy is that they use the argument of helping people out when it fits their narrative, but when it doesn't fit their narrative, they're ready to let people by the wayside. And there's a lot of people who pay into the tax system. I don't mind my money going to help people in certain situations. However, during the Clinton era did a lot of reform to the welfare system, um, and some of it was needed because there were literally like single healthy males who were collecting payments from the government, and they were able to stay in situations where they didn't have to work. And so I did think that was wrong when I came across that information. But we're supposed to be able to take care of our misfortune if we're such a great country. So I don't even know why the argument is. If you all have things going on to where it's difficult for you to work or to work at all, we're supposed to take care of you. You know what I'm saying? But these people act like the tax money that goes towards social advocacy and social assistance is so much. It's not. It's like a small percentage of the general budget. And even if you were to take every program away right now, it still wouldn't lower the deficit. It would be like throwing a pebble into a pond. And these people act like they can't fathom the idea of United States citizens being all put in a situation to where it will work out for them. I don't like to see people have a bunch of kids and can't take care of them. But at the end of the day, I'd rather take care of them than to not take care of them. Because when they are on the street and then they get into criminality because of they want to survive, then that causes a problem. So a lot of these people don't know nothing. And like the guy said, he's off today, or the person said they're off today. Well, I work primarily on the weekends, and I make a lot of money working on the weekends. And today's my last day, and I'll be off tomorrow. But I bet you if I'm on TikTok tomorrow, running my mouth, they'll be like, "Oh, you must be broke. You're unemployed." And I literally have videos of me when I'm at work, talking about different things. But it's just a narrative with these folks. They really don't care.
Yeah, I 100% agree. But also, like, to that point, because I know which comment you were talking about, it was somebody talking about Ukraine. That's a defense budget, and it was actually like the incredibly small amount of money that actually has gone to Ukraine. But what makes them think that if that money weren't going to Ukraine, that our defense budget would then be allocated to people in our country? That's not the way that works. First of all, that's just not how the spending of the government works. But second of all, we can do both, right? We can help people within our country and outside of our country because, what's that word? Privilege that we have in the United States to be able to do that, to be able to help other people as well as ourselves. But you're right. They don't really want that because it's the same people. And I don't know what your stance on abortion is, but it's the same people that will say abortion is wrong, but they don't want kids to have money for school lunch. So
I'm not a woman, so I can't speak on too much, but I'm definitely pro-choice because my point of contention for them is why should a double-digit age girl be forced out a baby, especially if that came from the I word or the SA word, and they're making a person have such a difficult life just to push their narrative. And if they were able to like maybe say, okay, well, in those situations we understand, but they make excuses for that. And then the religious aspect of it is a false narrative because this is not a religious country, and even the Constitution says born citizen. I know that that's a controversial topic to talk about, so I won't say much after that.
yeah, it's my bad for even bringing it up, but it just made me think of it.
Well, I was just thinking, well, number one, the person who said, I'm on disability because I won't lose weight.
They
Um,
always do that.
yeah, you think you know people, but don't be so quick to judge because you don't know what people go through. And also about the kids, that's what that's what unalives me about the whole immigrant issue and just a lot of stuff that's going on right now. People don't care about the kids. People blame children for their parents' indiscretions, whether it's a parent that isn't taking care of isn't taking care of their home, had, 10 kids without a thought of how they're going to take care of them, and with every intention of living off the government or whatever. I'm putting that in quotes, okay? I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just saying, people judge and think they know people's stories, and then they judge the children. And the children are the ones who suffer because they're not able to get the food if we can't grant the parent food stamps, for instance, or we can't grant that parent disability, SSI, housing assistance, light bill assistance, daycare assistance. The children suffer. And you people want a better America, a better country. That's what you preach on constantly, but you don't want to take care of the future of America. So explain that to me.
But hey, real quick, I do have to drop, but so thanks for having me up. Let's see, Sarita, I don't think we've ever talked, so it was really nice to meet you, and you as well, Ken. You guys have a great day, and I will talk to you guys later.
Oh, I'm sorry you have to go.
That's okay. I got to get on some meetings. I jinxed myself by saying I could chill today, and then.
But one of the best things that ever happened in my life, and I didn't see it at the time, but I'm glad it happened. I tell my mother all the time, thank you. Both of my parents were in juvenile justice. That's how they met. And then my dad, he did social work. He went and got his degree in sociology, and he did that.
Oh,
And some of the things they would tell me, like I think they took some of the strength they had out from seeing those situations out on me. But then again, I was kind of a bad kid, so I deserved it to a point. And so when I think about all the things my mother used to tell me and my dad would tell me, because he worked at one of the juvenile prisons for a while, and then he got a sociology degree. And most of those kids that were in those programs were kids that were in impoverished situations. And some of them were like the kids who were just bad behavior, no matter what their situation was. They just wanted to do whatever they wanted to do. They were very narcissistic. But a lot of those kids were there because of their upbringing. And they had horrible upbringings. You talk about people who had some adults do stuff to them, people who were just dirt impoverished. And that's why I said earlier about the criminality. You would think that you'd rather take care of a person. Some people like free handouts. Well, I'd rather donate towards a so-called free handout if that person doesn't become a threat to society. Obviously, you have to rein stuff in. Example, where I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. They created some Section 8 housing. They had very strict rules. And they made sure that every family that would move in there knew that at any time, if anybody in the household was caught doing anything criminal, they were evicting the whole family. And they said there would be no like appeal or anything like that. If your family member was red-handed caught, D-rugs, they did something like that out of the house or whatever, fighting in the house or whatever, it was an immediate eviction. And there were situations where people did get evicted, and they tried their best to cry about their family being there. And it was some sad cases, but they knew the rules coming in there, and they were supposed to make sure their children knew that. Any spouse, any partner, they had very strict rules, but it was good housing. It was they put them in a decent area, and they made them abide by the rules. So I do believe in stuff like that, but most of the times when you get in these situations, these kids are getting dealt a horrible hand. And then there'll be people on here like, well, I had to do that when I was a kid. Yeah, but maybe you were stronger than those people. And not everybody has the same strength and tolerance. And so, were we just going to leave these people behind and let them suffer? Like, that's not what happens in a great country.
right. My background is social work. I used to work for the state as a state social worker. So that's cool that you're dad, did you say?
Yeah, my father did straight social work, and my mother stayed in juvenile services until she retired. My dad's done social
Yeah.
work in school. He did it for the state government where we're from, well, where I'm from, and he did like in his last years before he stopped working, and then unfortunately he expired. Um,
Oh,
he did like social work for senior citizen homes. He always felt like senior citizen homes was very important to keep because he said a lot of people discard the elderly in these homes. So he did as much as he
exactly.
could to kind of like make them feel like they were worthwhile even when they were passing.
Right. Yeah. My one of my best friends, she was juvenile justice the court officer. So if somebody was sent to juvie or anything, she would be put in charge of their case. So she worked in the court part, and then I worked in the state child custody and all that.
Yeah, my mother did about what the other person did. My mother was responsible for getting a lot of children put into programs before they put them into actual juvenile prisons. She worked hard about that because she would see like when she would write up her reports and she would do recommendations or non recommendations. Hey, I got a call. I got to take.
Why is it white people bringing up white privilege? Because if we don't call it out, then who will? Why is it up to black people to correct us and teach us constantly when we can be calling out our own? Think about that. Why did they need to spend more of their energy um, doing a live for white people to tell them about their white privilege? That that doesn't even make sense. And no, there's not more black privilege than white. That's ridiculous. I don't know where you get that. But I guess you also think that DEI is a bad thing, which is DEIA, by the way. Accessibility is on there, which is what provides that ramp for your grandma on the walker. So think about that. People and their parking spaces. We need DEIA. We need people making accommodations. We need people including others because a lot of times white people don't think about this shit. They don't think about that they aren't including black people on their team. They don't think about the fact that they chose that white candidate over the black candidate. This is why DEIA was even a thing. This is why affirmative action was created in the first place back in, I'm not sure what year it was, so I'm not going to try to speculate on that. But that's why. This is why we have to be reminded to include LGBTQ people in our conversations, because people don't think about others, they only think about their own. And I can tell you that's true just from observing the communities here on TikTok and the way people follow other people, and they may only watch white creators and they don't watch black creators. Well, you know why the NFL is mostly black? Because black people are better at it. So there you go. I don't know. I don't follow sports. Why don't you go find the answer to that question? Go on to Black Live and ask them. Ho, shut up. Okay, that's interesting. The thing is, the fact that you guys get triggered by me saying, why is it so hard for white people to take accountability for their white privilege and microaggressions? The reason this upsets you is because you know it's true. If it wasn't true, you would not be offended. If it wasn't true, you would say, yeah, I agree with that. And you would keep on scrolling, or either you would watch or you would join in on a productive intellectual conversation about it. But instead, because you know that I'm talking about you personally, because you are the one doing these things, it's offending you. If somebody told me I needed to take accountability for my white privilege and microaggressions, I'd say, yes, I agree. And if they were talking about something specific, I would say, can you please let me know what I did? Because I want to fix that. I want to learn and I want to do better. And shouldn't we all do that? No matter what it is, whether it is dealing with white privilege and dealing with other races, dealing with how we treat others, no matter who those others are, disabled, another race, a person that we don't agree with for some reason, a mistake we made at work. Should we not take accountability for our actions? Because that's what I see a lot of. I see this Trump administration, they can't take accountability. They make excuses. Trump makes excuses. He won't take accountability for actions. Look at Pete Hegseth. He's not taking any accountability for his actions. In fact, didn't he accuse the journalist who first revealed all this stuff of being the problem? I'm pretty sure he did. People do not take accountability for their actions. And that is the problem. And that's why you guys have a problem with this background. Because you can't take accountability for your actions. You can't take accountability for the actions of people you support. You refuse to call out bad actors. You refuse to call out people with bad intentions who don't accomplish anything productive and who mess things up for the rest of us. You refuse, even if whether you are on the left or the right, you refuse to call out those people who are a detriment to the mission, the message, the prerogative. And when you refuse to call those people out, all it does is make things worse for whatever it was you were trying to accomplish. And I'm saying you guys because you are the ones getting angry. And if this were not true, if this did not apply to you, you would not be angry, or in your words, triggered. You're triggered by it, and you are a snowflake. It's snowing in here. It's snowing like crazy. What, I got 7 snowflakes? I'm seeing flurries. So this applies to you because it's offending you. This does not offend me. Happy to discuss it with you. There's no telling what you want to say. Let me see. So much hypocrisy. Well, Cody, I do agree that a lot of people on the left, we have bad actors in our party with bad intentions that make mistakes and can't take accountability, that have said racist and microaggressive things that can't take accountability. And that's the whole point of this in the first place. I already know that this applies to MAGA. So, I mean, we're not even talking about them. We're talking about people who are supposed to be for everybody who aren't. And I don't know who you're for, but I'm for everybody. There is no black privilege. What the hell are you talking about? Really, no black privilege. That doesn't exist. I don't care if you feel sorry for me. I feel sorry for you for not understanding a very simple concept that people should take accountability for their actions, and specifically white people should take accountability for their white privilege and microaggressions. Very simple concept. Y'all see it, so you can cry about it all you want. Be a snowflake. But this obviously applies to you. I do have white privilege. What are you talking about? I'm white. It was at this point that the live got reported and banned by TikTok, but luckily I filed an appeal and got it back. However, that is where our live ends, and I thank you so much for listening. Please leave comments. We would love to hear from you. We will continue to tackle this topic and many more because we want to encourage the best kind of allyship from those who claim to be our allies. Please encourage yourselves and your neighbors to always do better. Please be safe out there. Protest in whatever way you can because your voice matters. Remember, do not go gentle into that good night, and don't let the bastards grind you down.